play the issue, not the person. Good.
No.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the ordinary meeting of Council, Thursday the 11th of July 2024, opening at 5:30. Kaya, Nala Karij Noongar Mort Kan Karak Ninja Buja. We acknowledge the Noongar people as the traditional owners of this land. Announcements by the President. In the spirit of NAIDOC Week, this week we recognise NAIDOC Week. The official NAIDOC website introduces this year's theme as Keep the Fire Burning, Black, Loud and Proud. The fire represents the enduring strength and vitality of Indigenous cultures passed down through the generations, despite the challenges faced. It is a symbol of connection to the land, to each other, and to the rich tapestry of traditions that define Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. As we honour this flame, we kindle the sparks of pride, unity, and igniting a renewed commitment to acknowledging, preserving, and sharing the cultural heritage that enriches our nation. Black, Loud and Proud encapsulates the unapologetic celebration of Indigenous identity, empowering them to stand tall in their heritage and assert their place in the modern world. This theme calls for a reclamation of narratives, an amplification of voices, and an unwavering commitment to justice and equality. It invites all Australians to listen, learn, and encourage in meaningful dialogue, fostering a society where the wisdom and contributions of Indigenous peoples are fully valued and respected. Through our collective efforts, we can forge a future where the stories, traditions, and achievements of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities are cherished and celebrated, enriching the fabric of the nation with the oldest living culture in the world. In the last week, we were fortunate to attend three councillors and the CEO. We were privileged to be able to attend the National Local Government Conference in Canberra. We had Mr. Paul Giroa House did the Welcome to Country. There was something that he said that really resonated with me, and it was looking to see, hearing to learn, and listening to understand. And I hope, councillors, that we take that on within our meeting tonight. Item 3 is attendance. We have an apology from Councillor Wilcox. Councillor Wilcox is in Perth looking after her elderly father, and our thoughts and prayers go with her at this very tricky time that we understand that family does come first over everything else. Approved leave of absence, we have nil. Declarations of interest.
Thank you, Madam President. We have 2 declarations of interest. We have one declaration of financial interest from Councillor Ivey in relation to item 8.3 is a notice of motion in relation to a lease to the Warren Catchment Council, and the nature of the interest held is that Councillor Ivey is employed by the Warren Catchment Council, so Councillor Ivey will need to step out of the chamber when that item is considered. The second interest is an impartiality interest from Councillor Winfield, and it is also in relation to item 8.3, as he is a member of the Warren Catchment Council Committee. Although he represents the Shire of Manjimup on that committee, he is elected to register an impartiality interest.
Thank you. Section 5 is public question time. 5.1, response to public questions taking on notice. There is nil. 5.2, public question time. Under meeting procedure determined by the Shire of Manjimup, Standing Orders Local Law 2013, this is the only opportunity for members of the public to ask up to a maximum of 2 questions of Council. There is no further opportunity to question the Shire of Manjimup during this meeting. Questions can be asked on any Shire matter, not just on issues included in the meeting agenda, and each person should have up to 3 minutes to ask their questions, which may be extended by an additional 3 minutes where considered appropriate by the presiding member. Persons asking questions are entitled to a response unless the question is declared out of order by the presiding member. If a matter requires further investigation, that response may be in writing. Any person asking questions of Council must state their correct name and town in which they live, as this will form part of the public record for this meeting. Are there any public questions? Rock, paper, scissors. Thank you.
Is this on?
Yes, it is.
Hi, I'm Alan Lloyd. Hello, I've got Paul Road, Garrup, evening councillors. I've come along this evening to make a formal request that Manjimup Council rescind the approval given to ARPA Soto to extract gravel at 148 Wim Landing Road, Woolgarrup, agenda item 9.5.7 on June the 13th, as this matter proceeded to council without following due process. In other words, the item was prepared without reference to the comments made by myself and my partner, even though they were received prior to the advertised closing time for public comment period. As the proposal for this gravel extraction does not include any mention of the public road maintenance, we ask that the Shire take responsibility and in granting approval add a condition that the roads are maintained to their current standard. The recommendations to council included changes in operating hours from those outlined in the application. To quote the neighbour's application, the proposed gravel extraction operation, including cartage from the property, is intended to take place from Monday to Friday between the hours of 8:30 and 4 p.m. during the summer months, and between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. between May and October, again from Monday to Friday. Operations on Saturdays will only occur if production urgency dictates. So that was in their application. We fail to understand how the Shire officer recommended extending those hours without any explanation and without any opportunity for comment, which council passed en bloc on the officer's recommendation. While we will be impacted by the noise of the gravel extraction industry, as there is little buffer between our home and the extraction area B, we are aware that there is a need for gravel for road building and road maintenance, and as such, we do not oppose the development as outlined in the original application. We do, however, oppose the extension of hours as approved by council on June 13th. We note that councillors were unaware that any ratepayers would be negatively impacted by this development, as there was a failure of due process in the planning department. We now ask council to address this serious issue by rescinding the approval and addressing our concerns, as we believe that rescinding is the only way that they can be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Miss.
Yeah, I'll pass over to the director.
Thank you. Acting Director of Development and Regulation.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon, for Mr. Nixon
Mr.
Lloyd,
Lloyd.
for your question. Yeah, look, cannot apologise enough for the failure of process. We are taking the opportunity to review our process because of it. Unfortunately, there is no third-party appeal right for a planning application once it has been determined by council. What we intend to do is bring your submission to the next council meeting for consideration, measure it up against the approval as issued to Mr. Pissotto, and leave it to council to make a determination.
Thank you.
Thank you for that explanation. I'll continue with mine.
Can you just state your name? And
Thank you very
Mrs.
much.
Thank
Good evening,
you.
Madam President, councillors and people online, as well as Shire staff. My name is Mary Nixon, Paul Road, Woolgarrup. I want to speak about breach of process. Item 9.5.7 of Council meeting June 13th was in breach of process. Consequently, we're asking Council, as Alan has explained, to rescind the approval given to ARPA Soto to extract gravel from 148 Wim Landing Road, Woolgarrup. For the record, I'm tabling 3 documents to be included in the minutes: our comments to Council on DA 32, an email to councillors from the Acting Director of Regulation, Development and Regulation, and a copy of our email to councillors regarding this matter. Failure of due process is a very serious matter and one that should concern all ratepayers. This instance shows how easy it is to corrupt legitimate process of local government. As we outlined in our email to councillors, our comments reached the Shire by the advertised closing date. Our comments appear to have been ignored by the planning department staff and were not forwarded to councillors. Consequently, the proposal was approved by councillors on the officer's recommendation and passed en bloc. Whilst this instance of failure of due process was initiated by advertising the incorrect closing date, that is an act of commission, and it was then compounded by one of omission in not considering our comments. And while they may have been due to lack of experience or poor processes, this matter, if it is not addressed and rectified, leaves the way open to other breaches of due process. Breaches where there is intent on the part of a Shire officer to influence a council decision. It's important that Manjimup community can trust the competency and independence of our Shire staff, especially the staff of the planning department, as it is the planning department that affects our lives most directly. Planning applications and approvals, whether they be for garden sheds or dams too close to a property boundary, whether they be our own application, our neighbours' applications, or applications from investors from outside the area, we must have faith that all applications are given thorough and impartial attention by well-trained staff. This trust is most important because these applications will have an impact on both our natural and built environments, and therefore they affect the way our community interacts and develops. The Shire Planning Department is integral to the sound and equitable development of the Shire, and the honesty and integrity of its staff must be beyond doubt. Shire staff, Shire councillors and ratepayers must not ignore the importance of due process. If they do, they leave the way open to less benign breaches of due process, including abuse of influence and the corruption of Shire officers. Most unfortunately, this incident begs the question, what other breaches of due process have occurred in the Shire's planning department in the past? Breaches which have gone undetected or unremarked, and at what cost to ratepayers? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Nixon. Are there any other questions? Hello, young man.
Thank you, Madam President. My name is Mark Batty and I'm a 10-year happy ratepayer from 21 Sparsa Close in Croatia. I've been a member of a number of community groups in the Shire, including as a member of the Warren Catchment Council for approximately 18 months and currently act as volunteer treasurer. The Chair sends his apologies as he has had a recent bereavement he is dealing with. Can I start by congratulating the Council on seeking a review of its policies, its built assets and asset management in general. It is critical to the good and orderly management of your responsibilities that these reviews occur in a timely, efficient and effective manner and in accordance with Section 1.3.2 of the Local Government Act. And for those of you who need reminding, because it is a very good read at night, the Local Government Act, Section 1.3.2 states that the Act is intended to result in A, better decision making by local governments, B, greater community participation in the decisions and affairs of local governments, C, greater accountability of local governments to their communities, and D, more efficient and effective local government. My first question, and I have two, time permitting, Madam Chair, is in relation to Council's decision on item 9.2.2 at its ordinary meeting of 13th of June in response to a motion relating to the Warren Catchments Council seeking a lease of the former Top Notch Cafe site at the Manjimup Heritage Park. My first question, therefore, is can you confirm, Madam Chair, that all councillors received an email from the Warren Catchments Council Secretary providing both clarifications and concerns in relation to both the process leading into and then the outcome of Council's decision on that motion?
Councillors, did you all receive that? Yep. Yep, we all received it.
Lovely. Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, I do recognise that our current licence to occupy has expired as of June 30, yet we still have had no lease for consideration nor a renewal of the right to occupy. which is obviously a concern to us, as I'm sure it is to members around the table. My second question, Madam President, then is in relation to the item 8.3 submitted by Councillor Winfield for your consideration this evening. I'd like to acknowledge Councillor Winfield for seeking to meet with us to understand our concerns on the motion and Council's decision on item 9.2.2 of last month's ordinary meeting.
Mr Batty, sorry, that's 2.5 minutes. Would you like it to be extended? Or?
If you are willing, Madam Chair, it won't go too far over.
Okay.
On item 9.2.2 of last month's ordinary meeting and in making representation to Council through this agenda item. We appreciate being consulted and being consulted in good faith. With a revised strategic plan and new members in our community, I'd also like to take this opportunity to reiterate that our door is always open to any elected member or officer of Council who wishes to discuss with Warren Catchments Council any issues of concern or indeed any potential opportunities for collaboration that can benefit the communities we both seek to serve. We also look forward to providing you with an annual update of our activities and future focus in the near future. Madam President, my second question is, are there any further clarifications elected members require from Warren Catchments Council in advance of today's item 8.3 as presented for your consideration this evening that would enhance Council making an informed decision on the matter and ensuring that due process is applied? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Batty. Mrs Nixon, Mr Lloyd and Mr Batty, could we have your notes for the minutes, please? Thank you.
Sorry, yes, I'll be
Yep, that'd be great. Thank you.
So the question was, do elected members have any further questions? Throw it to elected members.
Okay, good-o. Councillors, do you have any further questions?
To Mr. Batty.
To Mr Batty, yes. We all good? I think we are clear. Thank you. Thank you, though, and I would appreciate an update, or we would appreciate an update through the coming years to what Warren Catchment Council are up to. Thank you. Thanks for the offer. Are there any other questions? No? All good? Excellent. Okay. Presentations. 6.1, petitions. We have none. 6.2, presentations. I have a presentation. So recently we had the Pemberton Art Group held a exhibition down in Pemberton. As part of that exhibition, we were very fortunate that we sponsored an acquisition art prize. I got to choose the painting, so that was a bit exciting. The level of talent that was displayed down there was absolutely amazing, and it was a very hard decision. This painting actually received a lot of recognition in the weeks after that as how extraordinary it was. So my first time at picking a painting, I think I did quite well. This is our newly acquired painting. So this is Doc Fry's Lane, which is just here in town. Al Fry Lane, that is just here in town. This is like looking at a photo. It is absolutely stunning. It's Barbara Moormill. Her paintings are incredible. So I'm very pleased that we have managed to acquire this one. And when our JC Rose room is painted and looking beautiful without the patches, this is where that will be going. So there you go. It's stunning. And I got my money's worth, more to the point. This is not one that you can just take home either, gallery. You can't, it's not a freebie. 6.3 is deputations. We have nil. 6.4, delegate reports. We have nil. 6.5, we have conference reports. So as I stated before, myself, the CEO, Deputy Shire President, Councillor Mylan and Councillor Omade, we were very fortunate to spend 4 days in Canberra at the National Local Government Association Conference and the Australian Local Government Conference. It was a fascinating 4 days, frightening, tiring, exhilarating, all at the same time. Councillor Mile and I have both presented our report as a hard copy, but I think Councillor Omade, did you want to speak to it?
Yes, thank you. I don't have the same diligent handwriting as my colleagues. Look, it's the first time that I've been to the National General Assembly after 25 odd years in local government and 8 years as the minister and 4 years as the shadow minister. So after this long period of time, I welcomed the opportunity to go, and I must say that I was very, very pleasantly surprised at the size and the depth of the Assembly, which was ably led by Linda Scott, who is the President of the Australian Local Government Association, and our own Karen Chappell from the West Australian Local Government Association is a Deputy and Board Member of ALGA. So just to give you an idea, there are 537 councils in Australia, 208,000 employees. I learned a new term called peri-urban. I presume that's somewhere between the biggies and the little ones. There are 400 occupations in local government. It comprises 10% of the public sector. 75% of the councils are rural and remote. And there are a number of reports that are available. One of the main themes of the conference was to try and extract from the Commonwealth Government 1% of the general revenue, general tax revenue, which local government's been trying to get for, in my time, at least 25 years. At the moment, it's about 0.5 something or other of a 1%, and many local governments are finding difficulty in being sustainable. So there are, we heard from the Governor-General, the newly minted Sam Mostyn AM, who gave a stirring speech. We heard from Ministers Catherine King, Kirsty McBain, Bridget McKenzie, Darren Chester, Bridget McKenzie and Darren Chester from the opposition, and Luke Gosling, OAM, obviously government member. As was mentioned by the President, the Welcome to Country by Paul Girawar House was really quite incredible. He spoke partly in Aboriginal and partly in English, and did the Welcome to Country, I think, at least 3 or 4 occasions. He had with him a red glass didgeridoo. They call it something else, but to me it looked like a didgeridoo. I spoke to him personally. He was quite a personable fellow and good to talk to. The moderator for the conference was Di Darmody from Western Australia, who many of you would know. In my time there, I'll try and keep it brief. I visited the National Emergency Management Agency. So what was happening while the conference was going on in the convention centre, the Canberra Convention Centre, there were breakout sessions in different rooms around. So what we tried to do as a Shire of Manjimup delegation is to split ourselves up so that we gathered information. So I spoke to the National Emergency Management Agency. I went to the Natural Disasters breakout session. So I don't know if you're aware, but in the eastern states, they've been experiencing significant natural disasters, like multiples of the same thing, either bushfires or floods, and many shires have been very, very severely impacted. I'd urge everybody, and council and people in the gallery and who are listening, to go onto the National General Assembly website. There were, by the way, 1,200 delegates at the function. Function was addressed by the Prime Minister on 2 occasions. He presented awards at Government House, so we had a dinner at Government House, and we had another dinner. Well, I think next time we go, we'll probably not go to all the dinners. I don't think they were a bit over the top, but certainly I wanted to highlight to you, there's a guy who spoke his name is Simon Kustenmacher. He's a demographer, and his main theme was for us to prepare for a major shift in consumer preferences. So if you go onto the website, remember that one, Simon Kustenmacher. He was quite outstanding. The other thing is we did do a whole lot of reports that are available. So if you go into that website and you go to the QR code, it will highlight all the things that you can access. There was a report on public sector risk. This report here from JLT, Jardine Lloyd Thompson, are our insurers. They've been taken over by Marsh McLennan in 2019. The document is really easy to read and has in it all of the risks that we're facing now, the 12 main risks. And just to give you an idea, the main risk faced by local governments is financial sustainability. Cyber security is next, managing ageing property assets and infrastructure, and it goes on. So there are 12 major risks. So I'd urge you to go in and have a look at that document. And the CEO and I will be attending an LGIS meeting tomorrow in Perth. And of course, JLT have been managing our insurance sector for quite some time. So I think that's probably enough from me, but it certainly was a worthwhile. I enjoyed the company of my colleagues. And on the last day, the Minister's speech on Friday was late on Friday, so we couldn't get an airplane home on Friday. So on Saturday, we flew home at 6 o'clock on Saturday night and got into Perth at 8:30. So it was a pretty long day. So I spent a lot of my time looking at things around Canberra. My erstwhile colleague, the Deputy President, went and had a look at the National Art Gallery. I went to the War Memorial, and I'd recommend that to anybody. So I think in all, it was a very worthwhile conference, and we've learnt not only a lot from the information provided, but how we'll go about it next year.
Councillor Mylan, did you want to add?
Thanks, Shire President. I would like to add a few remarks to those, and you have got my report, but I would like to go on the record with a couple of things. Firstly, to say thank you very much to the Council for agreeing to send us there. As a new councillor, I found it particularly informative because the scope and size of local government across Australia became evident to me. And what became really evident was the fact that local government, as a provider of last resort, is picking up the tab and picking up the services that really I think our federal and state colleagues are not doing. And when I look at the responsibilities for aged care, for land care, for libraries, for swimming pools, for building houses for doctors, for so many, for social welfare, looking at housing policies, and the amount of funding that local governments receive in proportion to the amount of assets and services they deliver was very clear, and the numbers were there. It's way out of proportion. So everyone there, every minister, every member of parliament, every speaker said that local governments are so efficient at providing services. They do a great job, but none of them were prepared to really go in and say that we should get an increase in untied fundings to councils. So where this really leads me is to, I don't think, and I certainly wasn't aware of it before coming onto council just in the last 9 months or so, wasn't aware of the great gap in resource funding. And I think we really need to sell the message to our residents and the residents of Australia about the amount of services that state governments provide, that local governments provide, in proportion to what the amount of funding they get. We must lobby for untied funding, the continued reliance on grants, which then we'll be beholden to the Commonwealth for, taking up huge resources, small shires like us, trying to write grants compared to, say, Sydney City Council with six grant writers. Well, guess who's going to get all the money? So I think the system is skewed in favour of the big councils in Australia, the system of funding, and our residents need to know that, and they need to think about that with elections coming up. And I think really the only thing we can do is to lobby as a council and as residents of this country to do something about it. There were some real challenges that I have written to you about, but there's a couple that I thought were interesting. Telecommunications is a big problem here, and that came up. And one of the things that came up, and we all know this from talking to the residents of our shire, we get told by the telcos that there's service there, and we've done all the checks. Well, the Australian government doesn't seem to believe that because they're going to publish what the real coverage is. So it appears that we're not getting the straight answers on that. So there's a commitment to it. Let's hope something comes through with it. The good global challenges that are impacting us are climate change. That came through in so many of the different speakers across the political spectrum. Both sides of politics are saying you need to get on board. This is happening. The renewable energy movement is coming. There's going to be no coal-fired power stations. There's opportunities for regions that can get on board with that shift. So that's one of the ones that really came through. Many other things, and they're on my little report that I sent you. I encourage you to have a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a big 4 days, but well worth going to, and it was a great networking event, I must say. I think I've had enough champagne in 4 days to do me quite some time. Section 8, motions of which previous notice has been given. Confirmation of previous minutes. Sorry, got a bit excited. Would someone like to move the previous minutes? Councillor Ivey.
I move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the council held on the 13th of June 2024 be confirmed as a true and accurate record.
And a seconder? Councillor Winfield. Put that to the vote, please, councillors. All those in favour? Carried 8-0. Okay, section 8, motions of which previous notice has been given. 8.1, notice of motion, proposed rating review and rating strategy. Councillor De Campo.
Thank you, Madam President. Could I move that Council 1 receives the notice of motion from Councillor De Campo in accordance with clause 5.3 of the Shire Standing Orders as follows. That Council direct the Chief Executive Officer to develop a rating review and rating strategy in time for the 25-26 budget, which includes consideration of matters such as, but not limited to, differential rating, e.g. plantations, packhouses, etc., informal and informal settlement rates. Point 2, to effect point 1 above, the Chief Executive Officer appoint an experienced consultant to undertake the rating policy review and strategy. Point 3, include in the 24-25 budget considerations $30,000 for the consultant review funded from the Strategic Asset Reserve.
Thank you. Is there a seconder to that motion? Councillor Omadé. Councillor De Campo, did you want to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam President. It's been a number of years, I think more than a decade, since we've had a review, a rating review, and we don't have a rating strategy essentially. This item, essentially what it does is that, but it includes a number of other things, and we don't have a mechanism right now to be able to rate properties differentially without science behind it. So for argument's sakes, and one that comes to mind to me is we try to encourage development within our town boundaries, and there's a lot of vacant land, but we can't rate it differently to encourage those people who own that vacant land to develop it for housing. So we would be able to potentially rate that differently. Likewise, for argument's sakes, pack houses on farms versus pack houses that might be developed in the industrial area in Manjimup, which would be rated much higher. So what it does is it levels the playing field up. And a third one that really what stimulated me to do it was that through the government's process of buying up farmland to essentially put plantations back for life, takes out massive tracts of communities, which kills communities, and essentially we need to be able to continue to grade roads, build roads, and build the community in some other areas. So I urge you to support the motion.
Councillor Omadé.
Thank you, Madam President. I commend Councillor De Campo on bringing forward this motion. It's an issue that's been around in local government circles for decades. As a matter of fact, the main reason why I joined local government was because the local shire at the time had doubled our rates on the farm, and being a young and immature farmer, I was concerned that I didn't know that they just had increased the rates that year. I thought they were going to do it every year. So I said to my dad, I think these people are going to send us broke, Dad. So he said, if you think you're so smart, why don't you stand up? So I joined the local government and later became the Minister for Local Government. One of the first things I did was to generate an inquiry into valuations and rating. Now, that report is sitting on the shelf somewhere, or you'll probably be able to access it now technologically, but it's very similar to what's being proposed. Now, there's no doubt there are a whole host of different rating mechanisms. The Shire of Manjimup hasn't really been too involved in differential rating. A lot of other local governments around the state do differential rate. Some of them are because of their local scenarios, and I think it's probably time that we do consider a differential rating system. And what this motion does, it directs the CEO to develop a rating review and a rating strategy. And that will make for, I think, some interesting discussions around the room. We're just about, I think, at the next meeting to set our rates. So there'll be a bit of a tension, I think, by the general community up there, because we might want to say set a rate of say 4% increase or something like that. But within that 4%, there are winners and losers. There are some valuations that go down and some that go up. And of course there are the minimum rate as well. So again, I commend Councillor De Campo for bringing this forward. I think it's timely and I think we should support it.
Thank you. Are there any speakers against the motion? Thank you. I think we'll put it to vote. Councillors, all those... Oh, did you want to close? No. There was no one against it. I figured you'd be right. Councillors, shall we put the motion to the vote? All those in favour? Carried 8-0. Thank you. Okay, 8.2, notice of motion, strategic asset management plan.
Thank you, Madam President.
Councillor De Campo.
I'd like to move that Council 1 receives the notice of motion from myself in accordance with clause 5.3 of the Shire Standing Orders as follows. That Council direct the Chief Executive Officer to commence a Shire-wide strategic asset review by preparing a project planning report. This report, to be presented to Council no later than November 2024, shall include the proposed project objectives, scope of works, timeframe, estimated costs and methodology. That happened last time.
Methodology.
Point 2. To effect point 1 above, direct the Chief Executive Officer to bring a report by the 7th of November 2024 ordinary meeting of Council with a project plan to develop an asset management strategy and asset management plan. Point 3, include in the 2024-2025 budget considerations $20,000 for the preparation of the project plan funded from the Strategic Asset Development Reserve.
Thank you, Councillor De Campo. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Moylan. Councillor De Campo, did you want to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam President. This essentially, I suppose, extends to what we've been talking about in the public gallery today. It's good governance to get a handle on what assets you have and what they might cost you, whether you might be able to divest some of them. We have more than 300 buildings in this Shire. Now, if we had to spend $50,000 on each building, that's $15 million. If we had to spend, obviously less is less, but it's a lot of money. But we don't know what we have to spend on each building. We don't know really what buildings we actually have, where they are, and have a good handle on their maintenance requirements. It also will extend to new buildings and the recurrent spending that might be required into the future for those buildings as well. So it's very important, I think, and I think it's actually legislated we have to have it, essentially. No, we don't. So it's very good practice. There you go. It's very good practice that we do have it. Speaking to one of the metropolitan mayors yesterday, they have 100 million in reserves. Their rate increase this year is 2.9% and have no debt. Very young city, shire or city. We don't have any of that. We've got, I think, 800,000 in the strategic asset reserve because we really have no idea of where our buildings are at. So I really urge you, so that we can make solid, firm decisions in the future about rate increases and where we put our money and where we put our resource, what we might be able to divest, what we can lease, who's leasing what, and what we do have available to lease. I urge you to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mylan. Are there any speakers against the motion? Did you want to close, Councillor De Campo? Okay, councillors, shall we put it to the vote? All those in favour? Carried 8-0. Thank you. 8.3, notice of motion, proposed new decision, lease to Warren Catchments Council, Inc., Manjimup Heritage Park, Old Cafe Building. Councillor Winfield.
Thank you, Madam President. I request councillors receive my notice of motion that Council direct the Chief Executive Officer not to prepare a lease for 1 year as per Council Resolution 29523, 13th of June 24. Direct the Chief Executive Officer to execute a lease on the former cafe building in the Manjimup Heritage Park to Warren Catchment Council, Inc., for a term of 5 years with an option for a further 5-year term at an initial 12-month rental of $10 per annum, subject to A, Warren Catchment Council, Inc., being responsible for the lease preparation fee, B, lease conditions to the satisfaction of the Chief Executive Officer, C, the building is provided in as-is condition with the lessee to fund the fit-out and modifications for their use, and D, approval of the Minister of Lands, E, rental terms after 12 months being consistent with the planned Shire-wide lease review and revised Council Policy 4.2.8 property leasing, and then point 3, reaffirm point 2 of the Council Resolution 29523, 13th of June 24, being that Council direct the Chief Executive Officer to undertake a review of all leases with clubs, community groups and recreational bodies and anything considered a peppercorn lease. This review, along with the proposed strategic asset review, is to inform Council of Council Policy 4.2.8.
Thank you, Councillor Winfield. Is there a seconder? Councillor De Campo. Councillor Winfield, did you want to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam President. I understand Warren Catchment Council acted on their perceived intent of the November 16 approval to occupy the building, that there would be a subsequent lease for at least 5 years. And I believe that the unintended consequence of Councillor De Campo's motion on June 13 was the effect of limiting Warren Catchment Council's ability to apply for grant funding to do the fit-out, which is mentioned in the notice of motion that's required. The building's in quite dilapidated condition, in my view, and they don't have the resources to do that themselves, so they're requiring grant funding. A tenure of 1 year is not sufficient to attract grant funding for such operations. So I urge you to support my motion and, if you like, write this oversight that we had. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Winfield. Councillor De Campo, did you want to speak to the motion?
Yes, thanks, Madam President. Look, I would like to speak to the motion, and first of all, I would like to apologise for the angst that was created in relation to the previous motion that I've moved. The motion itself and point E is in exact terms. I'm very comfortable because rental terms after the initial 12 months being consistent with a planned state Shire-wide lease review and revised Council Policy 4.2.8 lease property leasing covers the intent that I was trying to do in the last meeting. So in no way was I trying to diminish the work that the Land Care Group does. In fact, I've had a number of discussions with other Land Care Groups this week around the state to get an indication of what their rental arrangements are and etc. So completely understand that. And the reaffirming of point 2 of the Council Resolution 29523, that we continue to review all leases, clubs, community groups and recreational bodies, including everything that has a peppercorn lease. And the reason for that is that we lease a lot of buildings for 83 cents a month. That's just the reality. We lease a lot of buildings for 83 cents a month. And when you put that into conjunction with the previous notice that I just moved, you might get an understanding of our capacity to, 1, pay for maintenance, and then 2, our capacity to be able to continue leasing buildings at 83 cents a month. So I agree with the intent. I certainly endorse the motion and again apologise for any angst that it might have caused. Having looked at the time it was going to take to do the strategic asset review, 12 months wasn't enough, so I certainly agree to give a longer lease so that they can have the certainty of applying for a Lotteries West grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor De Campo. Are there any speakers against the motion? Against or question?
I'd just like to speak against the motion based on the sound process in particular, not necessarily the outcome. I raise concerns that we've had a precedent in this place that we've operated under where 1/3 of councillors are required, a signature is required from 1/3 of councillors for if there's a major change to a decision of council. And I don't believe that that's happened. We've operated in the situation that we imposed on ourselves that be done by the following Friday of the meeting. And even not looking at that, we find ourselves where we don't have 3 signatures to change the decision of council. And that's a situation that we've operated under. I believe that to some degree there's been an implementation to the decision of council in that the groups continue to occupy the building, and the lease ran out on the 1st of July. So in some ways the decision of council to extend for $10 that they have access to the building has been implemented. So I'm just raising the concern about sound process. I'm mindful of the fact that we've operated in such a way, and now we seem to be changing the rules a little bit, and the perception that might create in the community. We have a councillor that has declared a financial interest in this, so to some degree we will be under scrutiny. And it's also my belief that when you change a decision of council, you need an absolute decision of council. And I do point out the fact that to pass this decision, while it didn't require an absolute decision, it did obtain an absolute decision of council, and that it was carried 5-2. And so I just think that to undo the decision of council, we need follow the process that we need an absolute. So if we were to work on the system that we've worked on here, and I've been in council for 7 years, I think we are departing from the process that we've normally applied to ourselves, and I think that we just need to account ourselves for that sort of situation. I'd also raise the situation that we had quite a few concerns and questions at last meeting that were raised, but not necessarily answered in full. So one of the questions was simplistically, does this organisation require to pay rates? Now I've read and there's a copy if you care to read them in the attachments, and a good read of that would indicate that this organisation does qualify to pay rates and would necessitate to put an application in for a waiver based on the fact that they, if you apply the policy as it stands at the moment, if they conduct any commercial activities, they need to apply, and then even with a waiver, they're still compelled to pay the rubbish and
Point
the
of order, Madam
emergency
President.
services level.
Point of
So
order, Madam President.
I think
Point of order, Madam President.
Thank you, Councillor De Campo.
Point of order is not. The councillor is not debating the motion itself. He's bringing in
New information.
I'm trying for the purposes to remind my fellow councillors that the grounds on which the decision was made 5-2 at last meeting. I make note of the fact that one of the councillors present tonight wasn't present at the last meeting, so I think I'm entitled to raise the points particularly. I think it's relevant to what we're discussing, that we had an absolute decision of council, and I'm only bringing up the information that was provided at the last meeting, so I think it is relevant that I remind councillors of the information that's relevant to this matter. So to overturn and revoke this decision with the permission of the President, I'd like to continue. Thank you, President.
You're at 3 minutes, Councillor. You've got 3 minutes to go.
Yeah, okay. So just those questions. We spoke at last meeting about the garden, who pays for the water, those sorts of questions. It's been raised with me in the community that, there's other groups that may have expressed an interest in the group in using this building. We're told that they needed a business plan. I think there's a lack of information. There's no business plan. There's no indication as to the financial capacity of this group to pay a rent. We know from just a couple of inquiries that there's other groups that are paying rent of a similar nature in other areas.
Can we just keep it to this group, please, Councillor?
We'll keep it to this group. So the question really hasn't been answered whether this group can and has the capacity to pay rent, remembering that if they don't, that's picked up by the ratepayers. So I just think the situation we had, we've just had a motion to review all our buildings and how we rent them out and what happens, and then we're going to get a report on that in November. So it ties in to some degree with the decision that we had last meeting that we extend that they can use it for $10 for 12 months. And with all the information that's going to be gained between now and 7th of December, we can make a better decision. And I think I've been on council 7 years, and we've made some poor decisions, and I'm not proud of that, but my excuse is that in many of these cases we're not given enough information, and I don't believe in this situation we're given enough information either at the last meeting or the current meeting, and that there's questions left unanswered for us to make a good decision. So I will be voting against this, basically on the fact that I don't believe we've followed sound process. We've departed from the system in revoking the decision of council that we've operated and applied to ourselves in the past. So I think on the basis of accountability and for the unanswered questions that surround this situation and the fact that it was 3 years ago since we had a review, I will be voting against this decision based on process.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other speakers to the motion? Councillor Darren?
Yeah, I am going to speak to the motion. I believe I was the councillor that wasn't here last meeting. But I suppose, I think some of the issues that are being raised are going to be dealt with by the review that Councillor De Campo has did raise in the last council meeting, and that this notice of motion does continue forward with. So I think some of those issues will be dealt with. I think the reality is if we went through such an arduous process for every single building that we rented out at a peppercorn lease of 83 cents a month to community groups that are not-for-profit, we would never rent any building out to anybody, and we would lose a lot of community groups in this region that do a lot that nobody else fills the gap in, because we are small regional communities, and businesses and small businesses, big business, government can't fill those gaps because we're not big enough, and so many of those gaps are filled by not-for-profit groups. If we then said that we wouldn't give access to buildings to those for a peppercorn lease or some sort of negotiated lease, whether they can afford or not, and that will all be reviewed in the coming policy review, that we simply would end up with empty buildings. And part of the reason why this building is so dilapidated now is because it hasn't been used. These buildings, if they sit empty and don't have anybody using them and not fitting them out and not regularly in there and keeping the maintenance up to date, we simply don't have the money to keep them up to date and to maintain them all the time, especially if they're not being used. Having community groups in there not only gives a sense of ownership to them and to our community, but it also ensures that those buildings aren't sitting there wasted and ensures that we have a lively community that we all live in and love. So I disagree with a lot of the comments that Councillor Ventris has made. I don't think that those issues are accurate across the board, and I think if you applied that to all community groups, we would end up with most community groups in this region no longer having a home, and that would be an incredibly sad place to live. So I will be supporting this motion, and I hope that everybody else votes in support of it as well.
Thank you, Councillor Darren. Are there any other speakers against the motion?
I've got a question, Madam
Councillor
Speaker.
Holiday?
A question to the CEO. I was always given to understand that if you were to revoke a motion, you needed to have those signatures by the next day, and the basis of the revocation. We seem to, in more recent times, be allowing notices of motion to override the previous decision of council. So I'd like the CEO to cast some light on revocation versus notice of motion.
Thank you. Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Madam President. Under the standing orders and under the local government, I can't remember if it's the administration regs or the functions and general regulations, there are provisions to revoke or rescind, terminology is interchangeable, and to substantially change previous decisions of council. So there is a process for that. I think our standing orders provide an instruction that staff are not to action any agenda item before midday of the day after the council has met, in order that any elected member who wanted to lodge a request for revocation with the 3 signatures can do so unimpeded. If staff have actioned a resolution of council or have commenced the actioning of a resolution of council, it needs the revocation request can still proceed through to the council chamber. However, it needs to be supported by legal, financial, and other advice as to the implications of revoking or changing the decision. So going through the revocation process, there is this sort of rule of by midday the next day, but that's not the be all and end all. There are other avenues and other processes to seek revisiting of decisions. It doesn't just have to be through a revocation/rescission. And the process that Councillor Winfield has followed in this instance is equally as valid as pursuing the revocation process. While I understand there may be a precedent or a history or an understanding or a practice that's been adopted at this local government, it doesn't mean to say that adopting another process is wrong either.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers?
Let's just ask a question.
Question?
So with everything that's just been said and put in mind, as President, who ultimately gets the decision as to whether this can be put? So is it a decision of the President as to whether she will allow this to be put and that it's met the requirement? Who decides that it's met the requirements? Is it the President?
Council.
It's the council.
So we haven't had a vote on whether we allow it to be put. So
Would you like me to clarify?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. So the process that has enabled this to be put on the council table or agenda is the notice of motion process, which is provided for within the Shire of Manjimup's standing orders. So it has followed the same process as we've had two other notices of motion this evening, and it's followed that exact same process. So it needs a mover and a seconder, and to be debated, which it is.
Councillor Winfield, would you like to close the debate?
I actually think there's probably been enough said. Thank you. Just in response to Councillor Ventress's concerns, actually sent me to reading the Act, which was very quickly put me to sleep that night. But I believe that I acted accordingly and I took other advice. So I believe my actions were correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, can we put this motion to vote, please? All those in favour? And against? It's carried 5-2. Can someone ask? Thank you. Thank you. Section 9, Officers' Reports. For the interest of the gallery, I'll explain how we're about to consider the agenda items for this meeting. All councillors have had the agenda for 1 week, giving us time to thoroughly review each item. This meeting is the only time that councillors are able to formally debate agenda items. Soon I will read out each item listed in the agenda, and any councillor will be able to identify an item they wish to debate. These items will be listed on the board. All items not identified by councillors to be debated will be moved in accordance with the officer's recommendation in one motion as listed in the agenda and moved en bloc for voting purposes. If your item is not listed on the board and is moved en bloc, it will be passed as per the officer's recommendation. Following this, council will consider the remaining items in agenda order. Okay. 9.1, Offices of the CEO is absolute and must be taken out. 9.1.1, consideration of submissions and final adoption of the Shire of Manjimup Bushfire Brigade Amendment, Local Law 2024. 9.1.2, Proposed Council Policy 2.5.4, Legal Representation for Shire Representatives. 9.1.3, Review of Council Policy 1.1.2, Councillor Meeting Fees and Reimbursement Expenses is absolute and taken out. 9.1.4, Proposed Council Meeting Dates for the remainder of 2024. 9.2.1, Proposed Extension of Conditions Precedent to Lease of Baptist Care, Reserve 53687, Hospital Ave Manjimup is taken out, please. Finance and Administration, 9.3.1, Request to take possession of Lot 63 in brackets 26937, South Western Highway Palgarup due to non-payment of rates is taken out. 9.3.2 Shire financial payments for May 2024. 9.3.3 monthly statement of financial activity May 2024. 9.5 statutory planning. 9.5.1 proposed extension to existing soak with setback reduction at lot 3 in brackets 31 Springall Street Manjimup is taken out. 9.5.2 proposed low impact tourist accommodation, rural workers accommodation at lot 301 in brackets 37 Lintott Street Manjimup. 9.5.3 proposed extension to dam at lot 5190 Diamond Tree Road and lot 5189 Little Fair Road Eastbrook. 9.5.4 retrospective application for a dam with proposed expansion at lot 8160 in brackets 30499 South Western Highway Quinninup. 9.5.5 Amendment 29 to Local Planning Scheme 4. 9.5.6 retrospective application for the construction of a dam with a setback reduction at lot 9535 in brackets 14779 Vass Highway Diamond Tree is taken out. 9.5.7 consideration of an informal petition weed and sand maintenance practices at Windy Harbour Boat Ramp. Advisory committees. 9.16.1 unconfirmed minutes meeting notes of the Access and Inclusion Advisory Committee held on the 6th of June 2024 is absolute. 9.16.2 unconfirmed minutes of the Road Infrastructure Advisory Committee meeting held on the 31st of May 2024. Thank you, councillors. Would someone like to adopt that recommendation? Councillor Ivey.
I move that council adopt the recommendations contained in the council officers and committee reports on pages 1 to 103 of the agenda, with the exception of those on the board.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Amadou. Councillors, we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried 8-0. Alrighty. Page 22. 9.1.1 consideration of submissions and final adoption of the Shire of Manjimup Bushfire Brigade Amendment Local Law 2024.
As
Councillor
per the
Winfield.
officer's recommendation.
And a seconder? Councillor Ivey. Councillor Winfield, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Ivey, are there any speakers against? We put it to the vote, please, councillors. All those in favour? Carried 8-0. Thank you. 31. 9.1.3 review of council policy 1.1.2 councillor meeting fees and reimbursement expenses. Is there a mover? Councillor Ivey.
I move as per the officer's recommendation.
And a seconder? Councillor Winfield. Thank you. Councillor Ivey, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Winfield, would you like to speak to the... Are there any speakers against? Can we put it to the vote, please, councillors? All those in favour? Carried 8-0. 38. 9.2.1 proposed extension of conditions precedent to lease to Baptist Care Reserve 53687 Hospital Lab Manjimup. Councillor, do we miss one? Councillor Darren?
So just before I move, I'm just going to clarify, obviously, two emails came out. There was my motion and then an amendment. I am going to move my motion and then allow Councillor De Campo to move an amendment if he so wishes. So I move that Council, 1, refuse an extension to the due date for the conditions precedent to the lease of Reserve 53687, Lot 505 Hospital Avenue, Manjimup to Baptist Care WA Limited. And 2, request the Chief Executive Officer to coordinate a councillor workshop by October 2024 to review opportunities and constraints in relation to the future strategic use of Reserve 53687, Lot 505 Hospital Avenue, Manjimup.
Thank you. Is there a seconder to the amendment? Are you going to confuse me? Councillor De Campo. Councillor De Campo, are you...
I'd like to move an amendment to the motion, Madam President. I just wanted, because we're changing the words here. So I would like to... Oh no, that's fine. I would like to add a point 3 to Councillor Darren's motion. It is that we request the Chief Executive Officer to present a project plan to Council by December 2024, which details the financial, resource, schedule, scope and stakeholder considerations for divestment of the Shire's portfolio of aged and community care services and assets.
Thank you. So we vote on seconder to
The amendment.
the amendment. Councillor Mylan. Councillor Darren. No. Oh my God, Councillor.
I know it's confusing.
Oh my God. Could you
Thank
just not
you,
do
Madam
this
President. I'd just like to speak to the amendment to start with. We have a number of assets, as we've spoken about before. One of them is HAC, or Home and Community Care, which we facilitate on behalf of the federal government, would be the best way to put it. We have a property that we manage for them, or they manage on our behalf, we lease to them, and a number of other things. We also have a site that we are leasing to Baptist Care that is vacant, and also a site that has aged accommodation on it. So we have an aged accommodation or an aged portfolio. Local governments all around the country, and particularly around the state, are getting out of aged accommodation. The private sector does it better, and I think that in relation to this, it's good to have a strategic look as to whether we should do that. So the point 3 of this, the amendment, point 3, all it does is look at potentially divesting that or wrapping it up in a larger package for aged accommodation and aged care in the Shire of Manjimup. So I urge you to support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor De Campo. Councillor Mylan, would you like to speak to the amendment? Are there any speakers against the amendment? Right, so now we vote on the amendment. This is all very confusing. Can we vote on the amendment, please, councillors? All those in favour of Councillor De Campo's amendment? Carried 8-0. Okay, now we go back to this. Yes, Councillor Darren.
Sorry for confusing there, but I thought it was just a proper process. Yes. Yeah, so we now need to vote on the motion. Yeah. So yes, it is, was just a matter of making sure that it was clear, the process, and that there was the 2 steps there. So the intention of this is not to indicate to Baptist Care at all that we are not interested in them being able to continue forward on this lease site. The intention for refusing the extension to the conditions precedent for me was about the fact that this was developed 5 years ago, back in 2019. Since then, there has been no indication from Baptist Care that any planning has been done on this site, that any strategic direction to build a new aged care facility. In actual fact, I spoke to the area manager at an event held by HAC at the Wellness Centre, and he was seemingly unaware of this piece of land that was meant to be for our new aged care facility, which is a little concerning, and he did say that he had heard rumours about it in the past, and that there had been quite a significant shift in the staffing, and that there would probably be a re-look at it at some point. But given that it has been 5 years and we don't really have any direction on where they, or if they want to go ahead with this. And quite a lot has happened in that last 5 years. We have had COVID, we have had significant changes to our social and economic environment. We have a significant issue with housing affordability and homelessness, which simply wasn't there 5 years ago. And so I think going forward with a conditions precedent for a lease that was developed at a time before all those things isn't necessarily the best option for us at this point in time, and that we should really be taking this opportunity to say, no, we're not going to extend the lease. We are still open to these possibilities and open to these discussions. It's not shutting that down. It is simply giving everybody an opportunity to relook at this with fresh eyes in the current modern setting that we're in, and not from 5 years ago, because I certainly feel like 5 years ago was a lifetime ago compared to what's happened since then. So I'd encourage you to support the motion and also to support the intent that, yes, this isn't about pushing back on this. It's simply about making sure that we get the right process and the right situation for an aged care provider and for the Shire of Manjimup and for the broader community in general.
Councillor, question?
I'd like to raise a point of order, Madam Chair. I think the normal process would be that you should have given Councillor Darren the right to speak to her motion first, and once she'd spoken to it, then accept the amendment. So I don't know what you're going to do now.
Madam President. Councillor Omade, you're quite correct. Councillor Darren should have had the opportunity, as the mover of the substantive motion, to talk, to open debate before the amendment was put. In this instance, I don't think there's any harm or foul. It's really just acknowledging that there was a slip up there.
I forgive you.
Thanks. It's that Councillor De Campo.
The amendment always has become the motion because we voted on the amendment, it becomes a substantive motion. So, and Councillor Darren had the right actually not to speak on the motion before the amendment was moved. So anyway, this is a really good example of how for 5 years we've leased a block to somebody who has $40 million in the bank for 83 cents a month. So I think it's a great way to break that cycle, have, as Councillor Darren has said, with fresh eyes, have a new look, but also wrap it up with having a look at all of our aged care provision within the Shire of Manjimup. So I urge you to support the motion.
Right, which is what, okay. Oh, just a bit of clarification. Oh, only just. Are there any speakers against the motion? I think we've got the gist of what's going on here. I think we'll just vote on it, hey? So we are voting on the amended
Substantive motion.
Wade's motion. I mean, Councillor De Camp. No, you're not. Yes, that's right. Which is 1, 2 and 3. Right. Thank you. Oh, you know who doesn't make things easy? Councillor Ventris.
Just in an attempt to understand what the process...
Thank you.
Because there's been no motion foreshadowed, if this motion was to fail, and I don't expect it to do so, if this motion was to fail, then the original recommendation can't be put. Am I correct saying that?
Yes.
That's correct, unless somebody foreshadows it.
I'll foreshadow that. I don't.
I think we'll need to. Okay, so councillors, we are voting on the amendment to the alternative motion. Substantive. Oh, for God's sake, you know what we're voting on. All those in favour of points 1, 2 and 3? Thank you. Oh my God. This is what we're going to tell you. Thank you. So this one is carried. For God's sake. Alrighty. 9.3.1, page 42. Request to take possession of lot 63 in brackets 26937 Southwestern Highway, Palgarup, due to non-payment of rates. Councillor De Campo.
Thank you, Madam President. I've just pulled this out tonight to move as per officer's recommendation, actually.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Councillor Mylan.
Thank you, Madam President. And the reason is, from time to time, this is a very serious thing to do, to possess land that somebody owns. And from time to time, we get accused of, as we have indeed tonight, of passing things on block, as if we haven't taken consideration into the veracity of the situation that we have considered. And so tonight I just wanted to read to you section 6.64, actions to be taken against land where rates are unpaid. 6.641 in brackets, if any rates which are due to the local government in respect to any rateable land have been unpaid for at least 3 years, the local government may, in accordance with the appropriate provisions of the subdivision, take possession of the land and hold the land as against a person having an estate or interest in the land, and A, from time to time, lease the land, B, sell the land, C, cause the land to be transferred to the Crown, or D, cause the land to be transferred to itself. Maybe that's what we should have done. But anyway, I just wanted to pull it out to express to you, people out there that are watching, and council, that this is a very serious situation when we're taking somebody's land off them. But we have the ability to do it. We've considered it very carefully, and I urge you to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mylan. Are there any speakers against the motion? We put it to the vote, please, councillors. All those in favour? Carried 8-0. Okay, 951, page 53, proposed extension to existing soak with setback reduction at lot 3 in brackets 31 Springall Street, Manjimup. Councillor Mylan.
I'm not sure how I go about this, Madam President, but I think I just need to move my amendment. Is that correct? Yeah.
Madam President, if I may, Councillor Mylan, I think your intent was to not include item 1.5.
That's correct. I'll
So
move.
you could
As per office.
put the motion as the officer's recommendation minus 1.5.
Okay, I'd like to put the officers as per the put the motion as per the officer's recommendation with the deletion of condition 1.5.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor De Campo. Councillor Mylan, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would, just very briefly. Page 58, sorry, just lost my train of thought there. This is a very small dam on a very small property. It's more of a soak. It's going to hold 600,000 litres. I think the requirement for the applicants to get an engineer's certificate to approve this dam is excessive in this instance.
Thank you. Councillor De Campo. Are there any speakers against the amendment to the item? Okay, councillors, can we... Yep, if you like.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Councillor Mylan quite rightly says, this is a very small dam, 6 megalitres. The interesting thing is that in the item it talks about, I'm just trying to find it, talks about the dam not having any banks. Well, I think if you've got an excavation, some dirt went somewhere, but I think common sense would prevail. And it's interesting to note that when you look at this this item, and obviously it's in a special rural zone, and look at the risk category score is 19. When you looked at the other one of Gandhi's on Diamond Tree and Eastbrook Littlefair Road, score is only 15. So one's 500 megalitres, the other one's 6, and the one 500 has got a lower score. So I presume, and maybe the CEO can enlighten us as to, I presume the reason is that one is in a special rural zone and one's in a priority agriculture. Is that correct?
Madam President, I would need to defer to our Acting Director of Development Services.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, Councillor Omadei, that's correct. Given that the proposal's in a special rural block, or I think it's a special rural small holdings block, and given that those blocks are smaller, the risk matrix calculates it higher, as opposed to the dam out at Eastbrook, where there's a greater land holding, there's tens of hectares, so the risk is considered less under the matrix.
I've no more comments, Madam Chair.
Question? Yes, thank you.
Thanks. I'd like to speak just as a couple of closing remarks, and I think we've just touched on the issue that we've had. We've had a number of dams, and the rubric methodology that we're given and the weightings given to the various factors have caused some issues. So I think we have talked about this before, and I think we probably need to come up with another sort of formula or rating system, because that one clearly is causing some issues.
Thank you, councillors. Shall we put it to the vote, please, councillors? All those in favour? Thank you. Carried 8-0. Page 85. 9.5.6, retrospective application for the construction of a dam with a reduced setback at lot 9535 in brackets 14779, Bass Highway, Diamond Tree. Councillor De Campo.
Thanks, Madam President. I'd like to move that 1, in accordance with Part 10, Clause 5.5 and Clause 8.6 of the Local Planning Scheme Number 4, resolves to grant retrospective approval to the dam and the outbuilding at lot 4214 46 in brackets and lot 9535 14779 in brackets Vass Highway, Diamond Tree in brackets TP 82/2024 in accordance with the plans and specifications at attachment 9.5.61 in brackets, subject to the following conditions. 1.1, the development permitted shall be carried out generally in accordance with the plans and specifications submitted as below listed. 1, the reference 1, document title additional information for dam construction, 14th of May. 2, dam assessment plans on proposed lot, 14th of May. And 3, shed plans, 14th of May. 1.2, notwithstanding condition 1.1, the proponent shall install and maintain a 3 metre wide access track to the western boundary edge of the dam on proposed lot 4 to the satisfaction of the Shire of Manjimup. 1.3, all pumps and ancillary equipment and structures not part of this approval being set back from the property boundaries in accordance with the requirements of the Shire of Manjimup Local Planning Scheme Number 4. Advice to the applicant, and I do stress advice. A, the applicant landowner is responsible for the structural integrity of the dam construction, and B, it is advised that the applicant contact the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation to discuss the current water licence allocation with regards proposed new property boundaries. And 2, and most importantly, recognise that this application addresses a unique situation and should not be construed as a setting as a precedence and supporting a dam setback of less than 5 metres for an on-stream dam wall.
Thank you, Councillor De Campo. Is there a seconder? Councillor Omodo? Councillor De Campo, did you want to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam President. Just quickly, and I'll just read the reasons for the alternative because it's outlaid nicely there, is the landowners are seeking to address access to water on individual titles as a part of their asset distribution to their successors. This is a long-standing family organisation in Pemberton, neighbours to Councillor Omoday and just across the hill from me. This is a long-standing situation. It's not as if it's a brand new dam that's been built that we now need to sort out. So this is sorting out a family succession planning program, and it allows them to go on with their lives with new direction. And it's wonderful to see, in fact, that young Andrew Falcinella is carrying on the family tradition of farming in Pemberton, and for that reason we should encourage people to come to us with these problems so that we can solve them for them to continue to be able to have family succession planning as successful as the Falcinellas have done. So I urge you to support the motion. Thank you.
Madam President, I thank Councillor De Campo. I seem to be booming you up a fair bit lately.
You are. It's amazing.
Yes, I'm aware of this property. I'm aware of the families involved. I'm aware that they're going through either succession or division of the property. They are complex issues at the best of times. And again, Councillor De Campo has sought to, with the assistance of the staff, to find a solution to this very, very complex issue, and I commend him for that, and hope that the families can sort out their situation and make this project actually work. It just comes to mind that had this project been refused, it would just make the matter so much more complex that would be almost impossible to resolve. So Thank you, Councillor Campo again, and I recommend that Councillor support his alternative motion.
I'd like to speak for the motion put forward by Councillor De Campo. I was fortunate enough to have enough time to actually go out and have a look at the site along with fellow Councillor Milan, and it is, I can assure you, it's a unique situation that we most probably would be extremely unlikely to face in the future. But I'd just like to make the point that the current situation does not meet our current regulations or standard, if you like. I'm not sure what the right terminology is. So we have a dam at the moment that is actually located on 4 different locations. So to some degree, while it may not fit the bill entirely, there are major improvements in current deficiencies. I'll try and put it that way. So it's a move forward, even under our current guidelines, and it deals with a situation where a historic dam covers 4, and that will be rectified. So there was only some questions about access and distance from the boundary, but all the dams will now be contained within surveys, and that's a positive thing. And I congratulate the family also for going to the trouble of coming out on this cold night, coming to the meeting, maybe not quite so brave to get up and say something when they were given the opportunity of 3 minutes, but it's good that they've come, and it's good that they've stayed until their item's here. So and it's good that they're sitting all together there as a family. So it's good that they've taken an interest in the workings of council, and I wouldn't expect them to fully understand the workings of council tonight, but it's good they've come anyway.
Thank you, Councillor Ventris. I would just like to second that. We know marrying into a family farming family, we understand the pressures of succession planning, making sure everyone has the right sheds and the right infrastructure. This is just one extra pressure that you certainly didn't need. And I would encourage councillors to certainly back this traditional and long-standing family farm so that they can continue doing what they do so very well. Councillors, shall we put it to the vote? All those in favour? Carried 8-0. Thank you. You can sleep well tonight, Mrs. Rusnell. Page 96. 9.16.1, unconfirmed meeting notes of the Access and Inclusion Advisory Committee held on the 6th of June 2024. Councillor Ivey.
I move as per the officer's recommendation.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Darren. Councillor Ivey, did you want to speak too?
Yeah, I'd just like to recognise the contribution to the committee by Ross Davidson, Liz Lockyer and Tyler Delafranca, and welcome the new members to the committee.
Thank you. Councillor Darren. Councillors, should we put it to the vote, please? All those in favour? Carried 8-0. Thank you. Okay. Okay, section 10, late reports. Sorry? Yeah, yep. Section 10, late reports. Section 11, questions from members. Response to questions taken on notice. The answer to the question taken on notice has been provided to each of the councillors. 11.2, questions from members. Oh, thank goodness. 12, motions for consideration at the following meeting. 13, new business of an urgent nature introduced by decision of the meeting. 14, meeting closed to the public. Thank you. We thank you all very much for coming. We have a couple of items that are confidential items. We thank you for taking an interest, and we will see you soon. Councillor Darren.
I move that we go behind closed.
Well done, Jace. Welcome to the team, Jace.
Thank
There's no bailing out now.
Yeah, you can stop acting, buddy.
Yeah.
Get on with the real job, all right?
Okay, so
You had all your holidays for the next 4 years. Yeah, just realised that.
5.2 public reading of resolutions that may be made public. So that I think is just the last one, isn't it? No. Oh, is it all of them now? Yes. Yeah.
That's a good point. Not the first one.
Probably not the second one, it's just the last one.
Yeah, not the first two, but the third one.
Yeah, okay.
Are we back online?
Yes, we are. So the first two that we considered are commercially in confidence. The last one we can, that council accept the recommendation of the Chief Executive Officer to appoint Mr. Jason Giadresco to the position of Director of Development Services in accordance with Section 5.37 in brackets 2 of the Local Government Act of 1995.
Close the meeting.
No. Applications of leave of absence. Nil. There being no further business to discuss, I wish to thank everyone in attendance and close the meeting at 7:11. Thank you very much.
Good night, Australia. And I took advantage of you not being here the last one, so I won up, right? No, I won't count it. Just go to the 10. We didn't do it quite. Yeah.